I'm Alex Smereczniak, and this is another episode of How I Franchise This. Today I'm joined by GR Waldrop, a second generation franchisee who's quietly built a powerhouse portfolio. He has 19 Jersey Mikes, a Dairy Queen, and 4 Vicious Biscuits on the way. We get into what it was like growing up around the business, why GR decided to double down on franchising after college, and what it actually takes to scale from one location to 20 plus across multiple brands. If you're thinking about going deeper into franchising or growing your own portfolio the right way, this episode's for you. Let's dig in. All right, GR, thank you for joining us on the show today. Let's go ahead and jump right in. I would love if you could give the audience a quick background on yourself and what franchise brands you have partnered with.
Yeah, so we partnered with Jersey Mike's as kind of our main franchise. We have 19 locations open. We got one under construction, and then a few more in development that we're kind of working on. We have one Dairy Queen, and then we just signed a deal for 4 Vicious Biscuit restaurants here in Richmond, Virginia. And so we're super excited to partner with them and kind of get that rolling here in Richmond. But yeah, just about me, I'm a second generation franchisee. Um, I by choice, but not also by choice. So my dad got in with Jersey Mike's the same year I was born. So I like to think I came out the womb making sandwiches and is the worst. And so it's kind of always first job was working in a store at age 10. Um, and then the first place I drove when I got my license was to a shift at work. And so like Jersey Mike's has kind of always been in my family, and it's always just kind of been you know, an identity, I guess, of us. And so just having after college, got to searching for what we wanted to do. Me and my wife ended up moving back here to for Richmond and wanted to kind of get involved in restaurants. And I had a nice in with a guy who had restaurants here at Jersey Mike's. And so working back with dad was pretty cool. So taking that, what he's done, and then how can we exploit it, make it a lot bigger, put in systems and different processes that we can kind of grow things to multiple brands now is pretty cool.
When you and I first met, I loved hearing the story, and whenever I meet, what are called, multi-unit, multi-brand operators, or Mumbo for short, it's always this fascinating story of, how I found one and then I parlayed that into the next, and then next thing you know, you're up to 20 plus locations, and sometimes it's multi-generational, sometimes it's not, and either way, there's all this, weaving and navigating to get there. And I love the coming out of the womb building sandwiches and just growing up around it. We get a lot of individuals that come to Franzi, and they're looking for the right concept for them, whether it's the first or the 10th. And I'd say over half the time, people are doing it because they want to leave a legacy. They want their kids to be involved in building a business with them. And so to hear that you were, you know, one of those stories, right, where you did grow up around it, and look how it shaped you and how it's impacted your life, growing up around it, working for it, digging, yeah, rolling your sleeves up and getting your hands dirty early on in the family business, and now being at a point where you can parlay that into the next evolution. Do you also have kind of like hopes and aspirations to do the same for your family, and to kind of have that same experience that you did as a kid?
Yeah, I think one of the first things like my dad taught me is like, there's kind of two mentalities I think he said of working. One of them that he kind of leaned towards was I want to work really hard so I can do what I want to do. Uh, and so being able to build something, and the franchising model I think does a really good job of this, is that the systems are already in place. You can take that and scale it with kind of taking your own systems, adding to that, and really fleshing out something pretty big, which gives you the freedom to maybe, pop in and out of your business as you see fit to do the fun things that you want to do, or um, but it allows you just complete control over the process. I mean, with Jersey Mike's, they give you a great playbook on how to run operations, and then you can take that and flesh it out your back of the house. With Vicious Biscuit, I mean, the tech stack that they have is just unbelievable. That you can just the operations, I mean, kind of run themselves as a fact as long as you are paying attention. And so, uh, just with to answer your question earlier of like the legacy of having me work in the store for my dad is I learned more about business, more about life, than I did in my college career. I mean, I learned what food cost was. I learned what running $1 million business looked like. How do you make payroll? How do you pay these vendors? And that happens at the manager level at our stores. So, I mean, a lot of kids, they're like, oh, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I'm like, work for us. Like, I'll put you in charge of $1 million business, and that looks great on a resume, and take that with you in life. So having that legacy is just the lessons that you learn working in a franchise is, I think, more valuable than you have um, just in college and in life. So I mean, life-loving legacies are made, I think, with franchising.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think when you and I talked last, I shared, I got into entrepreneurship in college. I did a, laundry and dry cleaning pickup and delivery thing in college. And I say the same thing that you said all the time is I learned more running this like dirty laundry business than any like Wall Street. And I was a finance major. Like there was Wall Street, executives that were teaching us stuff, and it was really cool. And it was, I definitely learned things, but I felt like I learned a lot more figuring out a P&L of a laundry business and having to hire and fire employees and work with customers on issues and vendors on issues. And it's just I wish there was more of that hands-on real world practical experience earlier in most people's lives. And I agree with you. I think franchising is a phenomenal way to do that as a family and build a business together, or to get exposure to it early on, like you said, working for a group such as yourselves to get exposed to it earlier in life.
Yeah.
When you were going through, high school, college, etc., what when did you flip that switch and said, hey, instead of going and getting, this corporate, Fortune 500 job, I'm going to stick to the family business? Like, when did that light bulb go off, or was it always part of the plan that you and your dad had talked through, or you and your family had talked through?
Yeah, it was never the plan. I'm not even sure it's still the plan. Um, so I went to college in Charlotte, UNC Charlotte, and wanted to do motorsports engineering. So we raced NASCAR a little bit, some like real low level. Wanted to get into the NASCAR world, figured out I can't really do math to that level of engineering, and so became a marketing major. Wanted to still work in NASCAR, kind of the more marketing business side. Um, Found out that really wasn't for me, and started working for a catering company in Charlotte, and just kind of refell in love with the hospitality industry, taking care of people, really serving people, and just kind of making events happen. It was a lot of fun. Um, just hours were really rough. I mean, working weekends, working nights. My wife was a teacher, so we just had got married, so seeing each other was pretty hard with our schedules, and so we decided to move back home to Richmond. And my dad was, hey, if you ever want, we can. I always got a store that needs a manager, kind of thing. So came back, ended up running a store, and just kind of learning from the ground up. So I'd always worked shifts in stores, but never really ran a store until then. Um, Trial by fire, became a manager, learned real fast how to make a schedule, learned real fast, ordered trucks, and failed miserably and succeeded. And it just took time. And from kind of that trial by fire, I think it really helped me learn, okay, this works really well, this doesn't work really well. And so being very hands-on with the day-to-day allowed growth at scale. When you go to implement a change, like, okay, I know how this will affect a manager's day-to-day. Is it worth this big push if it's going to mess up maybe this process down the road? So I think really, it was never my plan to get back in with Jersey Mike's, but yeah, now I'm pretty excited because I've just, like I said, I've seen the franchise model, and I think Jersey Mike's does a really good job. We'd like them, and so it took a while to find another brand that really matched my standards for what I wanted, and Vicious fulfilled those standards. And so to move on to the next one, and then, hopefully grow that one pretty big, and then maybe add another one. And I think franchising, you can build some pretty big empires, like you said, with that model.
Mm-hmm. When you're telling the story about, having to learn how to build a shift schedule, and what can go terribly wrong, I think that's one thing that people maybe take for granted is, they start to manage a team of, kind of hourly, maybe more blue collar employees. And it's human nature, I think, to think, oh, a lot of people probably think similarly to how I do, and they're going to behave how I would behave. And then you show up and half your team doesn't, calls out, or they give you a last minute notice. What was that adjustment like, or was there even an adjustment for you there, or because you grew up around the business, you had more of realistic expectations and knew how to handle it sooner?
Yeah, I didn't at all. I think everyone gets into like business and they're like, oh, I'm gonna run a business, but really like what you're doing is you're managing people. Like you are in the people business, and any great franchise that knows that is ones that succeed. I think, you look at the top ones. I think Jersey Mike's up there. I think Chick-fil-A's up there. Um, Culver's is out there. It's people that really take care of their people, and really help their people shine, do amazing jobs. So I feel like I learned the biggest crash course I got was, you know, how do you take care of people? How do you, treat your employees better than anybody else? How can you find those good employees and keep them around? And so it might be spending more time on schedules to make sure that that single mom always can get out to get the kids from school. And, maybe I got to work a little bit more, bring someone else in and really try to finagle things to make it all right. Um, and then it's being a therapist and it's listening to problems that, problems don't stop at the door. They come in with you to work. And so how can we work those out really fast so we can make a good product? And um, so yeah, I think if you want to grow something, which franchising allows, you got to build a great team. In order to build a great team, you got to be a great people person. So
Is
the biggest lessons I think we learned is like, all right, how do I be a great people person? What do I got to do to keep my people happy, keep them wanting to be a part of this team, and really work on my business for me to the best of their abilities? Kind of the biggest lesson I think I learned.
I really like that. You're in the people business at the end of the day, no matter if it's sandwiches or breakfast or car wash, cleaning cars. Like you got to make sure you've got the right team and the people are motivated, incentivized, happy, taken care of, and treated, like people at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That's really good advice. You mentioned it earlier, so I think one of the things I really liked about your story is, right, you've got 19 Jersey Mikes, you've got more under development. Like you could stop there if you wanted to, or you could keep going down the path of Jersey Mikes. But you said, no, let's keep going, let's expand. And eventually found your way to Vicious Biscuit. And I'm sure, with your guys' track record, which you've learned, you have the right to be incredibly picky. How did you find, Vicious Biscuit? How did they cut through all that other noise and, very seriously get on your radar over all the other concepts that you guys would have been, well suited to become franchise partners up?
Yeah. So a lot of it was just kind of looking. So part of my criteria is I wanted a smaller brand, something that's kind of up and coming, someone to grow with. I think we were, I don't know exactly, but I think we were like store number 23 for Jersey Mike's, when my dad started. So plenty of white space in the country at that time. Now not a lot of white space in the country is kind of where we're kind of infilling places and, um, kind of looking for what can we do? What's the next big thing of big growth? And so Vicious Biscuit and really the franchising of breakfast and brunch is not as big as it could be. So we kind of leaned a little bit towards that rather than a pizza or a burger concept. Um, and then saw that Vicious Biscuit won, I think it's top 25 movers and shakers on QSR's website. And that kind of stuck out. I'm like, oh, that's a cool brand. Looked at it, but looking at the pictures online, I thought it was a full service restaurant. I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like a full service is just a pain in the butt. It's not something I want to get involved in. QSRs are kind of my bread and butter. I want to stick with those. Um, then a buddy, my college roommate, not roommate, fraternity brother, he works for a franchise accounting company. He's like, hey, I just had drinks with this guy who owns Vicious Biscuit. You ever heard of it? I'm like, yeah, actually I have. He's like, well, I don't know, whatever it is, you need to get involved with it. This guy's got something, and I think it'd be something pretty good. So we reached out to the guys at Vicious Biscuit, George and his team, and um, excuse me, he just an amazing team. Uh, I thought that they were kind of in the franchise game for years and just a huge company, just with their tech stack and their operations and development plan, and I'm just off the charts great. Um, but they were really focused on methodical, slow, intentional growth rather than let's just throw a bunch of stores at the map and just see what sticks. And, maybe we can get picked up by PE and then we're off to the races then. I mean, they're focused on, hey, how can we make each unit the most profitable that we can and then you'll want to grow another store, and then we're going to focus on that store. And it's just really great people. Take care of your people, take care of your operations, put it in a good spot, and everything will happen. And so I didn't feel pressured by them. I didn't feel pushed to want to do it, but it was like, hey, we're going to build this. If you want to come along with us, awesome. If not, have at it. We might not be a good fit, but we're looking for great operators that want to really go slow and steady and build a really good brand. And that was something that just excited me about them.
No, that's super helpful. And I'm curious, this is a new concept for you guys in the portfolio. You know the saying, or I've heard some people that have been successful, say this, where it's like the first million was the hardest, and then, the second's inevitable kind of thing, where it's like once you get to that certain scale and size. Is there any advice or I guess like feedback you have for those out there that might just have one or they're just getting started, and like, is there a gap that was the hardest? Was like 1 to 5, and this is, you and your dad's experience, but like was 1 to 5 incredibly hard, and then after 5 it became a lot easier to go 6, 7, 8? Or same thing with Vicious Biscuit, what you're experiencing now. Same thing. Is it was 1 really hard and 2 was easy, or what has that been like?
Yeah, I think my dad, he says that going to number 6 was his hardest. And so that's when you realize you needed another layer of management to help oversee stores. But I think the biggest advice I've ever gotten from somebody is, run your first store like you already have 3, run 3 like you already have 6, and so on and so forth. So if you run your first store and, if you already treat it as I have 2 other stores I need to focus on, I can't spend all my time at this first store, your operations are going to start creating processes for themselves. Your manager takes a little bit more ownership. If you're in that store, or in that location 24/7, your manager really can't grow. They can't take ownership of anything. So then by the time you get your second location, you're almost having to backfill all your expertise because you didn't cultivate the leadership, the processes, the systems that you leave a void when you leave that location to go for your second location. Well, then when you get the third location, you got even more of a void. And so you got to really strategically think of, all right, what do I put in place so I don't have to be the guy that makes every single decision? How can we put some systems in place to where, hey, this is handled by, the general manager, this is Harry, handled by the account team, or whatever it may be. Grow your stores thinking for the future. So if you have the idea of 5, cool. Start, what is day 1, store 1? How do I get to 5? What do I need to put in place so I'm not handling the day-to-day at store A? I can run top level or 5 stores thinking of future strategic growth. I think that's kind of been our biggest challenge of like, all right, we've kind of just done things very like, oh, it worked here, it worked here, it worked here, it worked here. Next thing you know, we got 20 stores. Like, man, we're wasting a lot of time and money on maybe systems we could have put in place that we're all doing the same exact thing, but we're each doing it. Well, let's just hire one person to do all these things. And now you get an economies of scale and you're really off to the races at that point.
Mm-hmm. It kind of reminds me, I love the, like, you're proactively thinking bigger than you are. And it reminds me of the Wayne Gretzky quote of, skate to where the puck is going. Like, you can't live in where you are in this moment. You have to be constantly operating like you're bigger than you are, and where you want to be headed, or where you're headed. I think that's really good advice. When you thought about, or I guess when you first got into Vicious Biscuit, like, again, you had all this experience with Jersey Mike's, and now there's this like pseudo or somewhat unknown territory, right? You're still in the people business. You still have all those learnings under your belt as a franchisee, and a lot of the mechanics are probably still the same. But was there anything that was, that was very different, for you the first few months after you signed with Vicious Biscuit, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a whole new concept now?
Yeah. So we haven't opened the store. So the biggest thing for me has been finding location is a zillion times harder. Just going from a 1,500 square foot building to a 3,000 plus square foot building on an end cap with a patio is just, I didn't think it was going to be as hard as it is to find a space. So we're really working with our real estate agents here locally, getting out, driving the market, trying to find different pockets that maybe we missed prior, and trying to find spots. That's been one. I think second is Jersey Mike's is making a sandwich, a really good sandwich, but its operations are very simple. Slicer, grill, that's about it. Vicious Biscuit. It's a full service kitchen. So we have, deep fryers, we got flat tops, we got a griddle, the whole 9 yards. You got a prep team, you got a, dish pit. And so it's a lot bigger of an operation to manage. And so having multiple layers of management is going to be a little different in store. So you'll have a front of house, back of the house, general manager, and, just bigger teams. But, with that, we have a great opportunity to really get a lot of good people that we can grow a brand with. So we're big on promoting from within. Almost, I would say 90%, if not more, of our managers at Jersey Mike's started as hourly team members. We don't require college degrees because, you don't need a college degree to come run a Jersey Mike's. It's a very simple process. Just kind of have a wherewithal, wanting to learn. And so with Vicious, we want to take the same thing. How can we get an hourly team member, grow with us, manager, district manager, give them a piece of the pie, help really change their lives with maybe some ownership stakes. And, maybe this is something they can spin it off and be like, hey, do you want to move to another state? We'll fund it and you run those stores. So we want
like we both said, to heck with college. We both learn more of getting our hands dirty and actually running the business and being in the four walls and, working the playbook and doing the things.
One manager, she was telling me, she's like, man, my mom doesn't want me to work here. She's like, doesn't want me to be a manager of a Jersey Mike's. And I had to ask her how much she made. She said X amount of money. She's like, Mom, I'm making more than you right now as manager of Jersey Mike's without a college degree. I'm like, yeah, people look down upon it, but it's a great opportunity to run a restaurant. And people kind of look down upon it sometimes. Like, man, the ways people make money are some of the coolest. And it could be, making a sandwich. It could be whatever, you name it. There's plenty of opportunities out there. It's a cool business to be a part of.
Well, I was shocked when I got into, deeper into the world of franchising. You start to hear what some of the GMs of, some of the large QSR concepts make. Like a GM of a McDonald's is, 6 figures in some instances. And I don't think fully appreciate or realize that. And, there's this bad rep or connotation of like, oh, you work at a McDonald's. It's like, I don't think you realize like how big of a business this is.
Yeah.
And in turn, how high quality of people need to be running it. And with high quality people comes higher compensations. And, I think just people don't, put 2 and 2 together. That's a really cool story of the person working for you.
Yeah.
Is there anything that, has totally caught you off guard these days? I feel like you've probably seen a couple of everything, or at least one of everything. Is there anything that's, really caught you off guard in the world of franchising?
I think recently the amount of just interest in franchising has been kind of different. Interest from not only like companies like Franzi just pulling together all the different options. I think prior it was kind of hard to find what is out there and what fits. Like I remember I used Franzi because I wanted to try it out, see actually what I got matched with. And just like, hey, I would have never thought about a painting franchise. But maybe that is what fits me. Or, there's so many different options out there that people don't think about. And so that's really cool. But then also that there's so much private equity money coming in and really accelerating these brands and really growing these brands. And then, even private family funds, I think, hit me up on LinkedIn once a week on just, hey, we'll fund your growth. Like, what do you need? We'll fund your growth. I'm like, man, where were you guys in 10 years ago? Everyone was struggling to find loans. And so people want to be a part of franchising because I think everyone's seeing that, hey, this is a really good business model to really accelerate growth in anything. Playbooks are there, the proven playbooks. Find the right people, it'll grow. With that, just my biggest fear with any franchise is growth too fast to kind of get the Subway model where it was amazing. It was growing like crazy. And then now they're shutting down more stores than they are opening each year. And so how do we, with Vicious, thinking of strategic growth, how we put stores in the right locations with the right people, making sure that operational standards are upheld. I think Jersey Mike's has done a great job growing to 3,000 plus locations, and knock on wood, you can go to any store across the country in Canada and it's going to be the same experience from, Point Pleasant Beach to here in Richmond, Virginia. That's kind of our goal. So yeah, operations are keys with anything growing this big.
Yep. Well, speaking of operations, I mean, I know we've talked about you've got Jersey Mike's, you've got the Dairy Queen, you've got, Vicious Biscuit now. How do you manage your time? I mean, how do you split time between all these different locations and concepts? Is there any, advice or, perspective you have there?
Yeah, so we are actually right now going through the EOS process, entrepreneurial operating system. Um, just started doing it, really kind of realized that we needed more structure at the top end of layering everything out to do that. So a lot of my time is kind of spent how can I work myself out of Jersey Mike's day to day, backfilling in with either automation of systems or the right people to where when Vicious Biscuit opens, I can spend 90% of my time doing that, build that team up, and then kind of come back over top of both of them. Um, so right now it's literally coming up with different systems. So like, all right, how I'm currently doing this, how can I stop doing this? Can this be automated or can this be someone else's task? Do we need to hire somebody in? We just hired someone else in our office that's going to handle a lot of our HR, recruiting, onboarding. We have 400 plus employees, so that was it
Wow.
won't be too much of a task. So we're like, hey, let's hire someone in to handle a lot of this stuff for us, so I can stop doing it. So we're onboarding that and trying to figure that out. So it's like I said earlier, it's like, okay, we have 20. How do I get to 50? So if I want 50 locations, what do I need to stop doing now that allows me to free up? Because the problems of 20 locations is a whole lot different than when you have 50 locations. What do those problems look like? Um, and so, yeah, that's kind of what we're doing now is just how can I work myself out of a job?
Yep.
Essentially, let someone else do it so I can focus on something else. And then, um, yeah, I just create more problems for myself the more I keep looking.
At 2U, I would call it bottleneck hunting. I would say, all right, where am I holding things up, and how do I go hunt it, chase it down, and pop someone else or another process in so I can go be the bottleneck somewhere else, and just
Yep.
constant game of chasing those down and breaking things and fixing it. Um, so I mean, you talked about how you're splitting time, and I think you kind of answered this question too. But how do you think about being working in the business versus on it? Is it really just kind of what you've already shared as far as like, hey, you got to project yourself 3 years out, and that's is the answer to the question, right? It's that's how you should be spending your time in versus on, or do you have a different perspective on that?
Yeah, I think the EOS has helped me kind of get that a little bit. I think it's one of there needs to be some ability to kind of check out of the day to day. Like there will always be problems in the restaurant every single day. Like it's a restaurant, there's always a problem. And so if I'd let those problems get to me and someone reaches out to me, I'm going to get bogged down in something very small that probably is, could have been an email. Someone else could have been empowered to handle that. So a lot of it is empowering the team, the managers at the ground level to make these decisions. Um, to where those problems never reach up to me. And if they do get to me, it's probably for a reason that it needs to be addressed. It's probably a bottleneck that needs to be broken, um, of that measure. So again, finding good people, empowering them to do their job well, teaching them, training them up so they can handle those things. So I can kind of get out of the day to day and really focus on, all right, let's just take a full day to brainstorm what's our 1 year goal. And from there, what's our 3 year goal? And as the USS 5 and 10 year goal, um, to where we can kind of focus on as a company, which direction are we headed rather than, are we staffed up for the night? And
Yep.
that takes time. I mean, I remember in the middle of COVID, I was just happy if everyone showed up today. Like that was a good day in my book. So I'm speaking from like things, having put so many systems in place to where now you can do that. I feel like when you're just starting out, you're in the thick of it. You're like, all right, cool. We did it for today. And then you got to do it all again tomorrow. And so you almost kind of get in the weeds of just existing rather than
Hmm.
growing to your next one. And I think it's investing in your business of like, all right, maybe I am the bottleneck and I need to hire somebody to run this location, which is going to cost me because that's just bottom line being put back into the store. But it allows me to look for a location somewhere else. And so it really just, yeah, stepping out and being like, all right, what's the expense that I need to pay in order to grow? And there's an expense there, an actual monetary expense.
Yep, everything's got an opportunity cost. And as you were sharing that answer, I was just thinking about it's surviving versus thriving. And at some point, you've got to leave survival mode and start thinking about how am I going to grow this portfolio? And you're doing motions, and activities that are 6 months, a year, 2 years out versus a day out, a week out, which is it's a hard shift to make. I talked to a franchisee, multi-unit franchisee at McDonald's a couple of years ago, and he was looking at buying laundromat franchises with us, and he owned, I think it was 43 McDonald's. And I remember asking him, I was like, Adrian, your business probably does that of like an NFL quarterback every year. And you got all these locations, huge team, massive army of people working for you. I was like, you got to be going into a McDonald's, every other day. And he looked at me and he was dead serious. He said, Alex, I couldn't tell you the last time I've been in a McDonald's location. I was like, you really can't remember? He's like, no, I've got an incredible leadership team at this size that basically runs everything for me. And what I'm spending my time on now is flying all over the country, meeting with other operators to see if they're looking to sell their location so I can add it to my, portfolio. And so he told me this 3 years ago. He's at 43. I caught up with him recently. He's at 90 McDonald's now. In 3 years, he doubled his.
3 years. That's crazy.
It's insane. And like to your point, like that's that next level of thinking as far as like how do I spend my time in the most efficient, highest value way possible. And it even, for someone like me and you who's around this type of business and thinking about these things all day long, even that shocked me that this individual hadn't stepped foot in his business for however many years because he just has such a good system and team built out that he's so dialed in on just growth and acquisition. Like that's all he thinks about, not menu innovation or cost or staffing or even building some of these locations. It's probably not coming across his radar because he's got a team that does that. And so I think it's a really valuable lesson, everything you've just shared for those listening right now that might be at one or two. And how do you get from that to five and 5 to 10 and 15 to 20? And for you and I talking now, how do you go from 24 to 50? And, if that's your ambition, it's very doable. It's very possible. You just have to be, I think rewiring your brain a little bit and thinking differently and thinking bigger. Last set of questions before we wrap up, and it's more, reflection and your kind of advice questions, but what's something that you think people totally get wrong about the world of franchising or the franchise model?
I know coming from a couple friends that own just, mom and pop restaurants, they cannot believe why we would pay royalties, someone else to run our business and pay franchise fees and pay royalties. And then in the same breath, then they complain about their food cost and their build out cost and everything else. I'm like, yeah, we don't have to worry about food cost or build out cost because it's all negotiated way higher level at bulk savings. And so it's like, yeah, we're a restaurant and we can run a 26% food cost. And they're like, man, how do you even touch that? I'm like, well, we have a buying power of 3,000 restaurants and you have one. Like, so yeah, we paid 6% in royalties, but we made it up in food cost. And then also the practices where our labor cost is lower than your labor cost. So marketing is pulled together. And so really think of it as like, hey, it's just a line item on the P&L and think of it as the additional savings you get, the expertise that you get. I mean, I'm thinking of Vicious Biscuit, Jersey Mike's, Dairy Queen. They all give you a playbook on how to run a successful store. And so a lot of it is look in the mirror. Am I following the playbook? Then it should be successful. Like, I'm not going to say it's perfect every time. You might get a bad location for whatever reason. But if you get out there, you hustle, you follow the playbook, it's going to be a successful business. I think a lot of times people get into franchising and they think that they could just turn the key, walk away. That's not it. I think it's still a grind. You still got to get into stores when you only have a couple until you get to the point where you can plug in those levels of leadership where you can step out of the business and worry about, mergers and acquisitions. You got to be in your restaurant. You got to be in your store. You got to be boots on the ground, figuring out what's working, what's not working. How can I improve this system? How can I make this better? I think a lot of people just want to get in and then peace out. But it's just not successful.
I like your advice too on like the royalties, not this negative bad thing. And something that we tell individuals is use the screener question of what is the franchisor doing for me lately? Because it is easy to say, hey, well, the franchise fee and the royalty maybe is worth it in the first few years when I'm getting help with site selection and build out and training. But 5 years in, I'm an expert now, right? I've run this business forever. I've got it figured out. Why should I pay the royalty, or what's the justification? And you nailed it. It's you still get the bulk purchasing power of the brand. You're getting menu innovation that someone at corporate is doing. You're getting new technology being built out. All these things that more than dwarf the 6% in or whatever it may be in royalty cost. And I like the analogy of it's just another line item. And as you were saying that, I was thinking it's kind of like paying for a Costco membership. Like you got to pay that $100, but it gets you access to all these other perks and discounts and savings, and it's a good way to think about it. Um, other second to last question. Is there anything that you wish you knew before you jumped into this world? I know, the family had been working on this, but as you made the decision, like, I'm going to make my career out of this now and I'm jumping into it, or before you made the decision to pull the trigger on Vicious Biscuit, is there anything you wish you would have known then that you now know?
That's a good one. Yes, yes and no. And I say that because I don't think what I'm looking for exists yet. And that's what I'm trying to work on as a side hustle. Um, but there's not a good operational playbook on how do you grow? Whether that's most places will teach you how to run one store really, really good. They'll teach you how to run the next store really, really good. But then how do you also add another brand in there? How do you set up your back of the house to manage multiple brands? Um, I read a book, Multi-Unit Leadership, by Jim Sullivan. Sorry, back on my desk. Um, and he talked about, like, treat one like you got three. And so that was really helpful in the same brand. But you have the economies of scale with other brands if you have accounting already set up in house, you have payroll already set up in house. Well, now you can grow to different brands, and your fee for growing bigger is even smaller now. So what are the systems? What are the softwares out there? Hiring, scheduling, payroll, accounting, all those softwares franchisees or franchisors try to not touch because it kind of mixes that franchisee-franchisor relationship of what they should use. So there's, 50 different ways to skin a cat. Everyone's trying to figure out what's the best way. And there's not a really good playbook for, hey man, here's how you get to 100 units. And here's what we think you need to have at unit 5, at unit 10, at unit 20 in order to really grow your operations, your systems, and in place to do that. So I wish there was a better roadmap, but I also think that's kind of the fun of why we're entrepreneurs. Like, there is no playbook. And so that's why we enjoy doing it to our own misery sometimes. And I think that's, I wish I knew how, but I also enjoy the fun of fumbling through it.
Figuring it out. I love that. It's a good catch-22 where it's like the journey is the outcome, or like the journey is the goal, right? It's like you're gonna get to 100, and then what? You're like, the next thing. And so
And it's too
I
hard.
like that.
Yeah.
There's always going to be something, and so yeah, having that struggle, having that challenge, I think is part of it. That's well said, because at first my brain was going on, oh, maybe there's a software angle here that Franzi could eventually build, and
People with everything.
yeah, we'll build that horizontal layer that helps all the multi-unit, multi-brand folks operate and
The
thrive.
franchising will teach you all the systems and software to make it faster.
Exactly. All right, last question, then we'll jump. I really appreciate you being generous with your time. But the last question is, what one piece of advice would you have for someone that's looking at getting into franchising now? For the first time, we're just getting started. Any advice for them?
Yeah, I think it's do something you love. I mean, I love hospitality. I love getting in there. I enjoy making subs. I mean, people ask me they'd rather be in my shoes, but I joke, I'm like, man, I'd rather be on the line with you guys. Like, problems are a lot easier when I'm just making sandwiches and getting in there and grilling up. So I truly enjoy being in a store, grand opening week, and really just working alongside people. So find a brand and a business that you love, because, at the end of the day, you're still responsible for putting out the product. You're still responsible for the service, and you need to be all hands on deck, all in with the brand. Because when it gets rough and it gets tough, you got to realize, why am I actually doing this? I love, I've had a whole staff quit one day, and I got a phone call from the district manager saying, hey, we need you open to close the next couple of days because everyone quit. Fine. I enjoy working. Like, it's a fun day. So yeah, don't just get into it because you see the potential ROI is really high. Don't get into it because, you know, hey, they're doing buku's numbers and I could really check out and go to live on the beach with my family while the business runs itself. Like, if you want to get in there and build something great, you got to hustle, you got to grind, you got to be in there shoulder to shoulder with your employees, and um, you got to live it. Got to live it. And
Yeah. I love that. You got to find something you're passionate about. I lied. I got one more fun question just because we recently posted about this. We saw a story where Rick Ross gifted his son on his 16th birthday a Wingstop franchise. So I guess my question is, if you were to gift your kid on their 16th birthday a franchise, what concept would it be?
what concept would it be?
It could be anything. There's
Anything. The man, Dave's Hot Chicken, I feel like is having a ball right now. We looked into them, but they're sold out in, I think, the East Coast. I could be wrong. Um, but I mean, I think they're having a time right now with chicken. Uh, I'm not sure if that's like chicken's just a fad right now and everyone's kind of jumping in on it, and who knows how long it'll be. But man, they're putting up some numbers. Either that or Chick-fil-A. I don't see how you can turn down a Chick-fil-A franchise at the numbers that they do.
at 16 years old, I'd be happy with either one of those as a
See,
as a
a
gift.
16-year-old, any keys to they'd be working for sure. They'd be on the schedule.
They'd be frying the chicken.
Exactly. You're gonna learn it from the ground up before you get the keys.
There you go. Well, GR, I appreciate you taking the time again and sharing your story, sharing your wisdom, sharing your experience. Hopefully this helps, a handful of people out there as they make their way on their journey. And again, hats off to you and all the success and, still chasing it and going for something bigger. When you easily could have said, hey, we're good at 22 or we're good at 23. It's awesome to see you keep going for it and building something big.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I mean, it's cool getting to learn more about you and Franzi and just, I mean, what you guys are trying to do in the franchise community. I think it's an awesome, cool technology, being able to use the AI to match people right. I mean, it would have saved me a lot of time trying to find my next franchise, if I hadn't already signed with Vicious Biscuit. So it's cool to see what you guys are doing, and hopefully you can connect a lot of eager, hungry people to their next dream.
No, I appreciate it. We're early days still, but it's starting to work in a way that I don't think anticipated. We've started to help a number of people find the right brand, find the right fit. And that alone has been one of the most fulfilling things, we could do, right? You described it earlier. It's like this journey and this entrepreneurial challenge is one of the most exciting, fulfilling things you can do. And that's our goal, is how do we help enable the next, million people plus to do the same thing and have that same experience that you and I did at an early age in college and having that realization. So thank you again. We'll play everything together and release this here in the next couple of weeks. And thanks again for coming on with us.
Yeah, of course, man. Anytime.